Hey guys, Joel's coming at you with another reasoning session where I challenge the status quo of the wisdom of the world and the church by diving deep into the ancient scriptures, uncovering meanings glossed over by translations and traditions, really cutting to the core of the metaphysical aspects of these ancient texts and applying them practically to situations in our present life so that we can step forward and manifest our best life yet, live in that new earth reality. And today I'm going to be talking about how you were born for such a time as this.
Come now and let us reason together. Come now, we can talk it over.
But before I begin, I gotta say, if you like these videos, what are you waiting for? Give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe for more, and stay tuned because honestly, you were born for such a time as this, and you're not watching this video by accident. This is the very thing that you are building your foundation on so that when this new earth actually is unveiled in its completion, we will actually be able to step forward as the agents in place for the kingdom of heaven and literally bring to pass that whole scenario. But with that out of the way, I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm reading from the book of Esther today, and a little backdrop on the story. What happened was when Babylon had exiled all the Jews from the kingdom of Judah, they all went into captivity for 70 years before they returned under Ezra and that whole Persian reconstitution to rebuild Jerusalem and the walls, etc., and establish the Persian satrapy of Yahud. And after Babylon fell to the Persians, of course, Daniel was one of those that were still in the Persian kingdom, but later on, the family of Esther was there. And Esther, as a young girl, was orphaned, so her cousin Mordecai took her into his own house, and then he raised her. But lo and behold, one day the king was throwing a 6-month party, and when he was all drunk and all, he's like, I'm going to bring my wife out here and parade her because she's so beautiful. His wife refused, and he's like, you're gone, baby. But then all of a sudden, he's like, I don't have a wife. So he had like this beauty pageant, for lack of a better word. And Esther won. She became the queen, and nobody knew her heritage. But Mordecai was a really strong man in his faith, and he stood up, even though everybody was supposed to bow to the kings and the officials. He stood up and he said, I will not bow to the official. And specifically Haman, who was so put off by this, he actually formed a decree and said, all of the Jews in the land are to be killed. So Mordecai finds out, he brings the news to Esther, and he says, you better go before the king and plead for your people. And Esther's like, well, nobody goes before the king uninvited. Like, the penalty is death. But Mordecai said, and this is what I want to point out, think not with yourself that you shall escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if you altogether hold your peace at this time, and this is definitely applied to us in this present day, us truth bearers, us light workers, those of us fighting for justice. If we hold our peace at this time, if we stay silent at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house shall be destroyed, and who knows whether you are come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And then Esther tells Mordecai to gather all the people together and to fast for her sake for 3 days before she goes in to see the king uninvited. And of course, she's going to also join the fast, her and her maidens. But what I really want to point out is that this time is a time of really great restriction and oppression and manipulation and lies and control. And it's just like pouring in. But we are strong enough that we actually came to this generation for this time. They say like the generation of World War II was the greatest generation in history because it resisted that tyranny and it actually turned it around. Guess what? This is going to go down as an even greater victory. And we are the heroes of the present moment. Literally, the present moment, it's always now. It's never like in the past or it's never in the future. That only exists in your memory. But the now, you were born for such a time as this, and it's always such a time as this. No matter what obstacle you're going through, you were born for such a time as this, present moment. And of course, on the third day, Esther puts on all her royal apparel. She stood in the inner court of the king's house, facing the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against or facing the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that he said, "Oh, no, she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Now, there's some symbolic reference there saying that the king has the authority, and when he extends that authority to the visitor in his presence, that visitor actually takes hold of that same authority. And look what he says. He says, "What will you, Queen Esther, and what is your request? It shall be even given you to the half of the kingdom." So between losing her life and getting up to half of the kingdom, she took that risk, and she knew that if she didn't act, help would come from somewhere else, and she would be at a total loss. So you never know how things are going to unfold. Sometimes you got to go uninvited. Sometimes you got to speak when you don't have the floor.
Sometimes you gotta go uninvited. Sometimes you gotta speak when you don't have the floor. Sometimes you gotta move when everybody else says you should say, "No way, no, not today." You gotta ask if you want an answer. Sometimes you gotta stand apart from the crowd. Long before your heart could run the risk, you were born for this. Hey, you were born for this.
And because of what Esther did, the day that is celebrated as Purim, as a result of this victory of the Yehudim over their enemies, it says that the Yehudim, or the Jews, had joy and gladness. Simcha v'sason. Literally, it's a day of celebration. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. So this is not some exclusive club based on race or how you're born. Guys, there will be a lot of people that join the ranks of light workers once we have that initial victory. Once they see that truth wins, light wins, God wins. That's ultimately it. Source has put you in this time for such a time as this. So stand up. You have a message. You have a purpose. So bring that to pass. Because if you're not fully who you're here to be, the world is not fully what it can be. So we got this potential, guys. Let's step up and really embody who we are, what we're here to do. Not live under control, but live in freedom, live in light, live in absolute harmony with all that is. When all that is in harmony, we will literally see this Earth 2.0 like we couldn't have imagined. Like the fairy tales of old will actually be a shadow to what we actually step into. And that's not an exaggeration, because a couple years ago, you wouldn't even have thought this kind of manipulation was possible in the nations that it's going on in now. But look at it. People are waking up, people are stepping forward, and people are realizing that the priorities they had don't even matter. And they're tapping into the real priorities. And because many of us are already walking in that, we're already starting to see this new earth unfold. So be on the right side of history, join the team, and really manifest your best life yet. I love you guys. I send you all blessings and abundance and the ability to actually step up. Break those shackles off. Really manifest from that state of being where you're not held back, and you will see massive gains. You will propel forward with a momentum that you never thought possible as Source ignites within you that fire of divine authority. So check you in a future reasoning sesh. Joel signing out once again. Agape. Salaam. Namaste. Shalom. And after Babylon fell to the Persians, and Esther as a young girl was orphaned, so she was taken in by her uncle Mordecai. And Esther as a young girl was orphaned, so her cousin Mordecai took her into his own house